All right, it is time to start talking about Ohio State's defense like it's an elite defense. And I realize off the rip, it's Purdue. Purdue is now 1-8. Purdue is not a good football team. However, what I am going to point out is usually when you got a football team like Purdue and the number is 38, right? That's how much Ohio State was favored by to win. It's been one thing for us to expect Ohio State to purport itself like one of the best teams in college football. But earlier this year, specifically against teams like Akron, you would wonder when this defense in particular was going to start putting up the kind of statistics and numbers that would lead us all to believe it's one of the 2, 3, 4 best college football teams in America. And then they finally got an opportunity to taste what it's going to be like for them to play for a Big Ten championship this year or in the college football playoff this year. They make it there, and it looks like they're going to make it there. When they went to Autzen and they played against Oregon, they gave up 31 points. They gave up 31 points to the number one team in the country on the road at a place where nobody has won since Washington, basically the last 40 games, okay? Oregon's going to probably name the number once again today. But that is, I think, part of the calculus when we're talking about what this Ohio State defense has done. You've heard the discussion around Ryan Day going, all right, forget the offense. I am an offensive-minded coach. I came up as an offensive play caller. I was a great offensive play caller, am a great offensive play caller at Ohio State. I handed those over to Chip Kelly so that when moments like this one can occur, and they do for Ryan Day, he could put down this other huge responsibility and generally put his focus where it needs to go. He'd even said something to this effect last year when talking about losing to Michigan. Now, we could talk about, the sign stealing and whatnot, we will, but one of the things that I think he was right about is he's asked to do so much come the month of November because he's play calling, he is taking on media requests, and his team is usually one that is in a discussion to make the college football playoff, if not win the national championship, and it felt like he was getting stretched thin. So he was trying to pass those play calling privileges off, and we thought maybe Brian Hartline was going to be that guy last year. Turns out to not really be that. This year, he hands it to his mentor, and it is Kismet, right? Chip Kelly wants to just coach ball and happens to be one of the best ball coaches in college football. And Ryan Day needs to be the CEO. He needs to be the head that is able to swivel and go in any direction they need to get his program where it's going to, where he ultimately wants it to go, which is back to winning Big Ten championships, back to winning the national championship for the first time since 2014. It's one of these things that I think really needs to get studied because I think the days of the play calling head coach are probably going to come to an end sooner rather than later because A, we're figuring out being the head coach is actually really friggin' important, and B, the play calling head coach hasn't really had the best experience here of late. I mean, I'm thinking about guys that win national championships, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Ed Orgeron, right? Like, you keep going down the line here. The guys that are able to say, you're the offensive play caller, you're the defensive play caller, I'm the head coach, seem to be doing pretty well right now. I even think of what Brian Kelly's got going on at LSU and how he's got that thing humming, had a Heisman winner last year. He's never been, as a Power 5 guy, the dude that needs to have a play calling sheet in his hands. And now that you've seen guys like Ryan Walters just go from calling defensive plays to saying, I'm going to fire the offensive coordinator, I'm going to do this for the first time, I think there's going to be less emphasis on who the play caller is unless that guy is really, really creative and the kind that you can't do without. And even then, you're getting to see that guy just wants to be a play caller. That guy does not want to be the head coach. I'm thinking about guys like Ben Johnson at the Detroit Lions or Joe Brady at Buffalo. I think that we are a Will Stein at Oregon to make it back to college football, or Chip Kelly. Now, when you know the defense isn't going well, you get to go have these hard conversations if you're Ryan Day with your staff and go, why isn't this working? Why are we running it this way? You have Nick Saban putting you on Front Street going, your defense is basic. Your defense is one that anybody could figure out. And I think the hubris there is when you have the athletes that Ohio State has on defense, you should be able to run your base. And everybody should know what you're running. It shouldn't matter because you're just more athletic and more talented. Turns out to not be the case. You have to vary your looks. You have to be very, very good at understanding the strengths and weaknesses of your defense and how they're going to attack the offense. You also have a superhero in Caleb Downs on the back end. How do you better utilize him? You got Sonny Styles running sideline to sideline. You got Cody Simon playing some of the best football that he has played in years. And finally, you're getting something out of this vaunted defensive line that hasn't seemed to have been about much this season until here of late. And now we're looking at Ohio State pitching a shutout for the second week in a row, if we're talking about this honestly. Because, yes, Penn State scored 13 points, but one of those is pick six from Will Howard. Means that the last touchdown that Ohio State has given up as a defense came in the fourth quarter in the Nebraska game. So they've gone more than 130 minutes without allowing a touchdown. And I expect that to keep up when they go play Northwestern next week. And then we finally get to see another test for this Ohio State team and the first real test for this Indiana team, we think, right? I'm assuming Indiana can do something against Michigan. It's going to be okay. I've assumed in the past, then Vanderbilt went and beat Alabama. So I couldn't tell you. Maybe Michigan finds something. I can say that we would really love nothing more than Indiana to be undefeated on their way to the shoe against an 10-1 Ohio State. Or 9-1 Ohio State. That would be pretty good. That'd be pretty cool. I think that we're getting there. And I also think that the more we get away from this Oregon game, the better it looks for Ohio State, because playing them to a 1-point loss in a game that you probably could have won, that just went all the ways that it needed to go for Oregon, makes you feel better about a neutral site game, right? Makes you feel better about perhaps playing that team at Lucas Oil in December, or playing anybody else, frankly, because now that we have seen Texas stomp a mud hole in Florida and walk it dry, and we saw the same Georgia team stomp out, Texas at DKR, the same Florida team give Georgia the what for and the how now. I'm not sure who's going to win the SEC. I am going to tell you that Texas looks really good. Does Ohio State play Texas? That could be great, because Ohio State actually plays Texas next year, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Jeremiah Smith continues to be that dude, man. Jeremiah Smith breaks Cris Carter's record for catches in a season with going over 42 in this game. He looks like the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, which is really the only trophy that Brian Hartline, receiver, hasn't picked up at this point. And he is the guy, right? If he's double covered, he's probably open. That's where we're getting to with him. I am interested to find out how this looks from Ryan Day's point of view, how much he enjoyed watching this goose egg go up for his players against what is the worst team in the Big Ten. Let's keep it real on that. But if you're an Ohio State fan, you have reason to feel good, right? You saw an offensive line that once again held up. You saw Will Howard that once again showed why he's your guy, right? And why they trust him. And Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins looked like they like playing football. I mean, that's been kind of a question with Travion Henderson in the last couple of years going into this month. Is that dude going to be okay? He looks more than okay. He looks ready to fight. He looks ready to win, as does the rest of this team. So I think they are actually rounding into form at just the right time. And after Northwestern, then it gets to be really intense. You got a really good Indiana game, and then you got a Michigan team that has beaten you the last 3 years that you ought to stomp a mud hole and walk dry. So we'll see.